The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Counselor Taemin stepped forward. His simple black uniform looked plain next to the bright colors and strange shapes of the other species around him. The human walked slowly to the speaking platform at the center of the massive chamber. "Friends and fellow members of the council," Taemin began, his voice calm and steady. "Today I speak for all of humanity across the galaxy. After much thought and discussion, we have made a difficult choice." High Mediator Quindara floated above the assembly, her energy form glowing softly. She had seen many species come and go over her long life. The humans had been here for 150 years, not very long by galactic standards. "We, the human race, formally request withdrawal from the Galactic Council." Taemin continued. "This is not done in anger or hate. We simply believe it is time for us to follow our own path among the stars." A few murmurs rose from the assembled aliens. Counselor Veltar, a tall reptilian creature, flicked his tongue in what might have been amusement. The humans were leaving? This was unexpected, but not really important. Humans were not the strongest fighters. They were not the smartest scientists. They were not the richest traders. They were just there. "We will begin moving our people from council space within 6 months, Taemin said. "All human colonies and stations will be given to the council. We ask nothing in return except safe passage for our ships." Chancellor Wu Jin sat in the human section, watching the other species' reactions. Some looked confused. Others seemed pleased. A few appeared not to be paying attention at all. This was exactly what they had expected. "Why are you leaving?" asked Counselor Nalthek, speaking for the insect-like hive collective. "Have we done something wrong?" Ambassador So Young stood up. She had prepared for this question. "No," honored Nalthek. "You have done nothing wrong. We simply have different ideas about how to live and grow. We believe it is better for everyone if we part as friends." High Mediator. Quindara's light pulsed, thoughtfully. "If this is truly what humanity wants, the Council will respect your choice. We thank you for your years of service." And that was it. No great speeches, no angry arguments, no dramatic exits. The humans were leaving, and most of the galaxy barely cared. Over the next 6 months, something strange happened across human space. Ships arrived at every human world and station. But these were not warships or cargo vessels. They were passenger transports and moving ships. The humans were actually leaving. On the mining world of New Busan, Foreman Jinsu watched as the last human families packed their belongings. The alien workers stood around looking confused. The humans had run this mining operation for 60 years. They knew every tunnel, every machine, every safety procedure. "Don't worry," Jinsu told the Veltaran supervisor. "Everything is clearly marked. The instruction books are in the main office. The automated systems will handle most of the work." The supervisor nodded, but he looked nervous. He had never run a mining operation before. None of his people had. They had always just worked under human direction. The same scene played out on hundreds of worlds. Human farmers left their fields with detailed notes about crop rotation and soil care. Human engineers left their factories with thick manuals about maintenance and repair. Human doctors left their hospitals with complete medical databases about treating different alien species. Chancellor Wu Jin stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Seoul, humanity's capital world. Below him, the city sparkled with lights. The spaceports were busy with ships carrying the last human residents away. Everything was running perfectly, just as it had for decades. "Sir," said his aide, "the final transport is ready to depart." Wu Jin nodded. He had been born on this world. His family had lived here for 3 generations. But they were leaving it all behind. The beautiful parks, the efficient transportation systems, the clean power plants that had never failed once in 50 years. "Have all the instruction manuals been delivered?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Complete technical documentation for every system. The new alien administrators should have everything they need." Wu Jin took one last look at the world below. "I hope they take good care of it." The transport ship lifted off smoothly. Within hours, it had joined the great convoy of human ships leaving the galaxy's core worlds. Thousands of vessels carrying millions of people, all heading toward the edge of known space. In the council chambers, the formal ceremony of withdrawal was brief. High Mediator Quindara accepted the signed documents from Taemin. Several species representatives were not even present. They had more important things to do. "Where will you go?" asked Veltar, mostly out of politeness. "Beyond the rim," Taemin replied. "There are empty star systems out there. We will make new homes." "Well, good luck," Veltar said. He was already thinking about which human colonies his people might want to claim. Within a year, it was as if humans had never existed. Their worlds were quickly divided among the other species. The Veltarans took the mining systems. The Crystalline Collective claimed the energy production worlds. The Hive Collective moved into the agricultural planets. Trade routes that had been managed by human companies were taken over by alien corporations. Space stations that humans had built and operated were given to other species to run. The galaxy continued to function, maybe even better than before. Some of the older aliens occasionally wondered what had happened to the humans. But most were too busy enjoying their new territories and resources to think much about it. The humans had left peacefully, and they had left everything behind. It seemed like a fair trade. High Mediator Quindara sometimes found herself looking toward the edge of space, wondering if the humans had found what they were looking for. But even she had other concerns. The galaxy was vast and full of problems that needed attention. The humans were gone, and life went on. At least that's what everyone thought. Far beyond the galactic rim, in the darkness between stars, the human fleet continued its journey. They had not just left the council. They had left everything they had ever known. But they carried with them something more valuable than planets or stations or trade routes. They carried the knowledge of how it all worked together. Station Manager Chris Hall stared at the blinking red lights on his control panel. For the third time this week, the main cargo processing system had shut down for no clear reason. The thick manual the humans had left behind said to reset the primary data core, but every time he did that, something else would break. "Sir?" his assistant called from across the command center. "The shipping schedule is backing up again. We have 17 freighters waiting to dock." Chris Howell rubbed his scaled forehead. Trade Station Gamma 7 had been running smoothly for 40 years under human management. The human station chief, a quiet woman named Manager Park, had made everything look so easy. Ships came and went like clockwork. Cargo moved efficiently from one dock to another. The complex scheduling system somehow managed to handle hundreds of different species with different needs. Now, after just 8 months of alien management, everything was falling apart. "Run the diagnostic program again," Chris Howell ordered. "And call the Veltaran engineering team. Maybe they can figure out what's wrong." On the other side of the galaxy, Fleet Admiral Thaxara was having his own problems. Pirate attacks along the Centauri trade routes had increased by 300%. The attacks always seemed to happen in the same areas where human patrol ships used to operate. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "another merchant vessel has been attacked near the Kepler Junction. That's the 5th one this month." Thaxara studied the star map. The humans had patrolled these routes with just 6 ships. His fleet had twice as many vessels in the same area, but somehow the pirates always found gaps in their coverage. "How did the humans do it?" he muttered. Their patrol pattern made no sense, ships scattered all over the sector, never seeming to coordinate properly. His tactical officer, a young crystalline named Zexara, looked up from her station. "Perhaps they were just lucky, sir. Or maybe the pirates were afraid of humans for some reason." But Thaxara was beginning to suspect it was something else. The human patrol routes had looked random, but maybe there was a pattern he couldn't see. Dr. Haywan sat in her small laboratory on Research Station Beta 12, carefully documenting everything she observed. She was one of only a few dozen humans who had chosen to stay behind. Officially, she was a refugee from a failed human colony that had run out of resources. In reality, she was there to watch and learn. What she was seeing worried her. The research station had been built by a joint human-alien team 15 years ago. It was designed to study stellar phenomena in the dangerous Vortex Nebula. Under human administration, the station had maintained perfect safety records while conducting groundbreaking research. Now, safety violations were increasing every week. The alien scientists were brilliant, but they seemed to miss important connections between different systems. The atmospheric recycling system was overworked because the new administrators had expanded the research labs without upgrading the life support. The power grid was unstable because they had added new equipment without balancing the load properly. Dr. Hey1 called her Veltaran colleague. Could you help us with the sensor array again? We're getting interference on channels 7 through 12. This was the 4th time this month. The problem was simple. The new experimental scanner they had installed was broadcasting on frequencies that interfered with the navigation sensors. But every time she explained this to the alien engineers, they would fix the immediate problem without understanding the larger issue. Have you considered moving the scanner to a different section of the station? She suggested carefully. That would require rewiring 3 decks, the Veltaran replied. Much easier to just adjust the frequencies when problems occur. Haywan nodded and helped fix the immediate issue, but she made detailed notes in her hidden journal. The aliens were smart and capable, but they seemed to think in straight lines. They could solve problems one at a time, but they struggled to see how all the different systems connected to each other. Captain Do-hyun drifted his small ship through the asteroid field on the edge of the galaxy. His vessel was disguised as an independent trader, but his real job was much more important. He was part of a network of human observers, watching and reporting on what was happening in the galaxy they had left behind. His latest report made for disturbing reading. Trade efficiency was down 18% across all major routes. System failures were up 47% on former human installations. Most concerning of all, several minor conflicts had broken out between species who had never had problems before. Captain, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a distress signal from a crystalline merchant ship. They're requesting assistance with a navigation failure. Do-hyun considered this carefully. Officially, humans were no longer part of galactic society. They were supposed to stay away and let the other species manage on their own. But people were in danger. Set course to assist, he ordered, but maintain our cover identity. The crystalline ship was drifting helplessly near a dangerous gravity well. Their navigation computer had crashed while trying to calculate a safe course through the complex gravitational fields of a triple star system. It was exactly the kind of problem that human pilots dealt with routinely, but most other species found challenging. This is Captain Do-hyun of the independent trader Morning Star, he announced over the radio. I can guide you to safety if you'll follow my lead. Grateful for assistance, the crystalline captain replied. Our computer systems cannot calculate a safe path. Do-hyun smiled sadly. 3 years ago, there would have been a human navigation service station in this system. Human pilots would have guided dozens of ships safely through these hazards every day. Now there was nothing but empty space and confusion. Meanwhile, back in the central galaxy, Emergency Coordinator Veltar was discovering that his new job was much harder than expected. The Council had created his position to handle the increasing number of minor logistical issues that seemed to be cropping up everywhere. Today's crisis was on the agricultural world of New Harvest. The automated farming systems that fed billions of aliens across 3 sectors were malfunctioning. Crop yields were down 30%, and no one could figure out why. The soil analyzers show optimal conditions, reported the chief scientist. The weather control systems are functioning normally. The irrigation networks are operating within acceptable parameters. But somehow the crops are failing. Veltar stared at the data reports. Everything looked fine individually, but the results were clearly wrong. What did the humans do differently, he asked. Nothing that we can see, the scientist replied. They use the same equipment, the same procedures, the same scheduling systems. We've followed their instruction manuals exactly. But something was missing. The humans had made it look easy for decades, and now the same systems were failing. Under alien management. It didn't make sense. Dr. Hyun-woo worked alone in his hidden research facility, analyzing data from across the galaxy. As one of humanity's top systems analysts, he had been tasked with understanding exactly what was happening to galactic civilization in their absence. The picture that emerged from his research was deeply troubling. Every system that humans had, designed, built, or maintained, was showing signs of degradation. Not dramatic failures, but slow, steady decline. Like a machine that was still running but gradually wearing out. The pattern was clear to him, but he wondered if the other species would see it in time. Humans hadn't just participated in galactic civilization. They had been the invisible foundation that held everything together, and now that foundation was gone. Outside his window, the stars shone coldly in the darkness between galaxies. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were building new homes and new lives. But they were also watching and waiting. The question was, how long would it take for the galaxy to realize what it had lost? And would there be anything left to save when that moment came? The lights flickered across the entire city of New Veltar as Emergency Coordinator Veltar rushed through the crisis center. 3 years had passed since the humans left, and what had started as minor problems was now becoming a disaster. "Sir," his aide called out, "we're getting reports of power grid failures in the Delta sector. That's the 5th major system to go down this week." Veltar stopped at the main display screen. Red warning lights dotted the galactic map like a disease spreading through healthy tissue. Communication breakdowns in the crystalline systems. Food. Distribution failures in the agricultural worlds. Atmospheric processor shutdowns on a dozen terraformed planets. "What's the connection?" he demanded. "There has to be a pattern." His technical team exchanged nervous glances. They had been asking the same question for months. The failing systems seemed completely unrelated. Different technologies, different species, different sectors of space. But they all had one thing in common that no one wanted to admit. They had all been built or modified by humans. Jin-Ho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished repairing another critical system on mining station Omega 15. To everyone around him, he was just another maintenance worker trying to keep the old equipment running. They had no idea he was human, or that he was carefully documenting every failure he encountered. The mining station was a perfect example of the crisis spreading across the galaxy. The humans who had built it 30 years ago had designed it to be operated by Veltaran workers. Every control panel was labeled in Veltaran script. Every procedure was written to match Veltaran thinking patterns. Every safety system was designed around Veltaran biology. But the humans had also hidden layers of complexity that the Veltarans never saw. Backup systems that activated automatically when primary systems failed. Diagnostic routines that predicted problems before they became critical. Load balancing systems that distributed stress across the entire station to prevent cascade failures. Now those hidden systems were failing one by one, and the Veltaran engineers had no idea they even existed. "Worker, Jin-Ho?" called Supervisor Kralik. "Can you explain why the atmosphere recyclers keep shutting down? The instruction manual says they should run for 6 months without maintenance." Jin-Ho carefully considered his answer. The recyclers were designed to run for 6 months if the station population stayed below 2,000 people. But the Veltarans had expanded the mining operation and now housed 3,000 workers. The extra load was slowly destroying the equipment. "Perhaps," Jin-Ho suggested carefully, "the station is handling more people than originally planned." Kralik's scales darkened with irritation. "The humans said this station could support up to 5,000 inhabitants. We're well within the design limits." Jin-Ho sighed internally. The humans had indeed said the station could support 5,000 people, but only if you upgraded the life support systems, expanded the power grid, and modified the waste processing centers. The Veltarans had added more people without making any of those changes. "I'll do what I can to keep the recyclers running," Jin-Ho said. Across the galaxy, refugee leader Yun-Jae was dealing with a very different kind of crisis. Her secret network was helping evacuate civilians from failing colonies, but they had to be extremely careful. If anyone discovered that humans were still operating in galactic space, it could cause a diplomatic disaster. Today's emergency was on the planet Haven, a world that the Crystalline Collective had claimed after human departure. The atmospheric processors that maintained the planet's breathable air were shutting down randomly. Each failure left millions of aliens gasping for Breath until backup systems could restore normal air composition. How many ships do we have available? Yunjae asked her coordinator. 12 vessels in nearby systems, came the reply. We can evacuate about 8,000 people if we move quickly. The irony was bitter. 3 years ago, the crystalline beings had celebrated taking control of Haven from the humans. They had called it liberation from human interference. Now those same beings were dying because they couldn't maintain the systems humans had built to keep them alive. Yunjai's ships moved in silently, disguised as independent traders. They would evacuate the most vulnerable civilians and transport them to safer worlds. The crystalline leadership would never know that their former human subjects were now saving their lives. Council President Zephyros floated in the center of the emergency session, his crystalline form pulsing with stress patterns. The great chamber that had once hosted routine political debates was now a crisis command center. Representatives from dozens of species argued frantically about the spreading disasters. The situation is clearly sabotage, declared Councillor Nalthek. Someone is deliberately attacking our infrastructure. Impossible, countered Admiral Thoxera. Our investigations have found no evidence of external attack. The systems are simply failing. Then explain why it's happening everywhere at once, demanded the representative from the Hive Collective. Our home system's food distribution network collapsed yesterday. Our people are starving. Zephyros had been reviewing classified reports all morning. The scale of the crisis was staggering. 73 major system failures in the last month alone. Trade networks disrupted across 12 sectors. 3 entire colonies evacuated due to life support failures. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should consider contacting the humans. The chamber fell silent. For 3 years, no one had mentioned the departed species except in historical contexts. They were gone, and good riddance. But now... Contact. Them for what? Asked Veltar. They left us. Why would they help? Because people are dying, Zephyros replied, and they might understand these systems better than we do. The suggestion sparked a fierce debate. Some representatives were too proud to admit they needed help from the humans who had abandoned them. Others were beginning to panic as the crisis spread to their own worlds. Investigator Mireille watched the council session from the observation gallery, her human features hidden behind a disguise field. Her intelligence network had been monitoring the galactic situation for months, and she knew things were about to get much worse. The system's failures weren't random. They followed a precise pattern based on how long different technologies could operate without proper maintenance. The humans had built everything to last, but not forever. Eventually, even the most robust systems needed care from people who truly understood how they worked. Her hidden scanner recorded every word of the debate. This information would be valuable to human leadership as they decided how to respond to the crisis. Some humans wanted to return immediately to help their former allies. Others argued that the galaxy needed to learn the full cost of independence. Sir, her aide whispered through a secure communication channel, we're receiving distress signals from 17 more systems. The cascade failure is accelerating. Mireille nodded grimly. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about interdependence. For 150 years, humans had been the invisible glue holding galactic civilization together. They had been translators, mediators, system integrators, and problem solvers. Other species had seen them as unremarkable because human contributions were subtle and behind the scenes. Now those contributions were gone, and the true cost was becoming clear. In the depths of space beyond the galactic rim, Admiral Young-Su received the latest intelligence reports from agents like Mireille. The human fleet had been monitoring the situation carefully, debating whether and how to respond. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from 47 systems. They're requesting immediate technical assistance. Young-Su studied the star charts showing the spreading crisis. As a military officer, he understood the strategic implications. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, and only humans had the knowledge to fix it. They could return as saviors and dictate their own terms. But was that the right thing to do? Humans had left peacefully, hoping the other species would learn to work together. Instead, they were discovering that cooperation was much harder than anyone had imagined. "Send a message to human leadership," Young Su ordered. "Tell them it's time to make a decision. We can't watch the galaxy burn forever." The message would take weeks to reach the human colonies in their distant exile. By then, how many more systems would fail? How many more people would die? The galaxy was running out of time, and everyone was finally beginning to understand what they had lost when the humans quietly departed. Archivist Subin sat surrounded by thousands of data files in the abandoned research facility on Kepler Station. For 2 years, she had been working in secret, posing as an independent historian studying galactic development. What she had discovered would shock the entire galaxy. "Computer," she said to the terminal, "display correlation analysis between human departure timeline and system failure rates." The holographic display filled the room with complex charts and graphs. Every line pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The galaxy wasn't experiencing random equipment failures. It was experiencing systematic collapse directly linked to human absence. Her research had started simple enough. She wanted to understand why so many systems were failing simultaneously. But as she dug deeper into historical records, maintenance, logs, and engineering databases, a terrifying pattern emerged. Humans hadn't just been another member species of the Galactic Council. They had been the foundation that made galactic civilization possible. Council Speaker Nethara rushed through the corridors of the Emergency Command Center, her tentacles writhing with stress. In the 5 years since human departure, she had watched a thriving galactic civilization slowly crumble. Today brought news that the Veltaran homeworld was experiencing atmospheric failure. Tomorrow it might be her own people's turn. "Speaker," her aide called out, "we've received a research report that you need to see immediately. It's about the cause of the crisis." Nethara grabbed the data tablet and began reading. Within minutes, her worst fears were confirmed. The report, compiled by someone called independent researcher Subin, laid out the truth that everyone had been afraid to see. "Get me a direct communication with all council members," she ordered. "This changes everything." The emergency session began within hours. Representatives from every surviving species gathered in the Great Chamber, which now showed clear signs of neglect. Even the Council's own systems were failing without proper maintenance. "Fellow beings," Nethara began, "we have finally discovered the true cause of our crisis. The answer has been in front of us all along, but we were too proud to see it." She activated the main display screen, showing Subin's research data. Humans were not just participants in our civilization. They were the coordinators who made it possible. The evidence was overwhelming. Every major galactic achievement of the past 150 years showed human involvement. The universal translation protocols that allowed different species to communicate. Humans had designed the core algorithms that could handle the complexity of 200 different languages and thought patterns. The standardized life support systems that let any species visit any world. Human engineers had spent decades figuring out how to create environments that could support wildly different biologies simultaneously. The trade networks that prevented resource wars. Human logistics experts had developed the incredibly complex routing systems that managed supply and demand across thousands of worlds with different needs and capabilities. "But we never saw them do any of this," protested Counselor Kralnek. "Humans always seem to work on simple, basic tasks." Dr. Hyunwoo stepped forward from the observation area, dropping his disguise field. Several council members gasped at seeing a human in their chamber. He had been monitoring the session and decided it was time to reveal himself. "That was by design," he said calmly. "Humans learned early that other species responded better when they thought they were in control. So we worked behind the scenes, making sure everything functioned smoothly while letting you take credit for the successes." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. "A human? Here? But how?" "You're supposed to be gone," Veltar said accusingly. "Most of us are," Hyunwoo replied, "but some stayed behind to observe and document what happened after our departure. What we found was both predictable and tragic." He gestured to the display screen. "Every species in the galaxy excels at something specific. The Crystalline Collective, understands energy manipulation better than anyone. The Velterans are master miners and builders. The Hive Collective can organize massive populations efficiently. Then what made humans special? Demanded Nethara. Integration, Hyunwoo said simply. We were the only species that instinctively understood how to make different systems work together. While you focused on perfecting your individual specialties, we focused on building bridges between them. Admiral Young-Soo's image appeared on the communication screen as he joined the session from his flagship in deep space. The human fleet had been monitoring the proceedings, and he felt it was time to participate directly. The galaxy is dying, he said without preamble. Not from war or disease or natural disaster, but from a lack of coordination. You have all the pieces needed for a successful civilization, but you don't know how to fit them together. Then help us, pleaded Council Speaker Nethara. Tell us how to fix our systems. Young-Soo exchanged glances with Dr. Hyunwoo. They had been preparing for this moment for years, but it was still difficult to see the proud galactic civilization reduced to begging for assistance. It's not that simple, Young-Soo explained. The problems go deeper than just technical failures. Your entire approach to civilization is based on species competing with each other for resources and territory. Our systems were designed around cooperation and shared responsibility. Ambassador Jae-hee materialized in the chamber through a teleportation system, her arrival causing another stir among the council members. She had been humanity's chief diplomatic representative before the departure, and many of the older aliens remembered her. Honored members, she said formally, I bring a message from the Human Republic. We are willing to provide assistance, but not under the old system. What do you mean? Asked Zephyros. We won't return as a member species that you can ignore and take for granted, Jae-hee explained. If the galaxy wants human help, it must fundamentally change how it operates. She activated her own holographic display, showing the framework that human leadership had developed during their years in exile. No more council of competing species. No more resource allocation based on military strength or political influence. No more taking essential contributors for granted. The proposed system was radically different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. Shared governance based on cooperation rather than competition. Resource distribution based on need rather than power. Protection for species that provided essential but invisible services. You're asking us to completely restructure our civilization, Veltar observed. Your civilization is already restructuring itself, Young-Soo pointed out. It's just restructuring. Toward collapse, we're offering an alternative direction. Mediator Seok-jin appeared on another communication channel, broadcasting from the Human Fleet Command ship. His role would be crucial in the negotiations to come. The choice is yours, he said to the assembled aliens. Continue trying to maintain systems you don't understand until complete collapse occurs, or accept a new model based on the cooperation principles humans tried to teach for 150 years. Nethara looked around the chamber at her fellow council members. Some were nodding thoughtfully. Others appeared angry at being dictated to by the species they had dismissed. A few seemed to be calculating political advantages, but the reality was undeniable. Systems were failing faster every day. Entire worlds were being evacuated. Billions of lives hung in the balance. What would this new system look like in practice? She asked. Humans would return as coordinators, Jae-hee explained. Not as rulers, but as the species responsible for making sure all the different parts of galactic civilization work together effectively. Every major decision would involve human input on integration and long-term consequences. And if we refuse? Asked Counselor Nalthek. Dr. Hyunwoo gestured toward the displays showing failing systems across the galaxy. Then you continue managing the crisis on your own. We won't interfere, but we also won't help. The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed the implications. After 5 years of watching their civilization slowly crumble, they were being offered salvation. But the price was admitting that they had been wrong about humans all along. We need time to consider, Nethara said finally. Time is exactly what you don't have, Young-Soo replied. Our analysts estimate you have perhaps 6 months before cascade failures make recovery impossible. After that, you'll be looking at decades of rebuilding instead of months of repair. The truth hung in the air like a physical weight. The galaxy, that had once barely noticed humanity's quiet departure, now faced extinction without their return. The Council would have to choose pride or survival. President Ne Young stood on the bridge of the massive flagship Hope Rising, looking out at the greatest fleet in human history. 7 years had passed since humanity's quiet departure from galactic civilization. Now they were returning, but not as the ignored middle-tier species they had once been. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender transmissions from 47 star systems. The Galactic Council has formally dissolved itself and is requesting immediate assistance." Ne Young nodded grimly. The reports from their observers had been devastating. Entire civilizations were collapsing as critical systems failed beyond repair. The proud species that had once barely noticed human departure were now begging for their return. "Open a channel to all remaining galactic governments," she ordered. "It's time to lay out our terms." The holographic display activated, showing her image being broadcast to emergency centers across the galaxy. In the ruins of the old council chamber, the surviving representatives gathered around failing communication systems to hear humanity's response to their crisis. "People of the galaxy," Ne Young began, "7 years ago humanity departed your civilization peacefully. We hoped you would learn to work together without us. Instead, you have discovered that cooperation is much harder than anyone imagined." Mediator Seok-jin stood beside her, holding the documents that would reshape galactic civilization. The negotiations had taken months, even as systems continued failing. The alien species had fought every change, even while their worlds died around them. "We return now not as members of your council, but as coordinators of a new federation," Ne Young continued. "The old system of competing species has proven unsustainable. The new system will be based on cooperation, shared responsibility, and recognition of interdependence." On the former council world, Emergency Coordinator Veltar watched the broadcast with mixed emotions. His people had lost 3 entire colonies to system failures. Billions had died or been evacuated. The price of pride had been higher than anyone could have imagined. "The terms are simple," Seok-jin announced, taking over the broadcast. "The old Galactic Council is permanently dissolved. In its place, we establish the Cooperative Federation with shared governance between all species. Humans will serve as coordinators, responsible for systems integration and long-term planning." The new structure was radically different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of species competing for resources and territory, everything would be managed based on need and capability. Instead of military strength determining political power, decisions would be made by councils that included representatives from all affected populations. Engineer Captain Dongwu led the first wave of human technical teams back to the failing systems. His ships carried not just repair equipment, but detailed training programs designed to teach alien engineers the principles they had never understood. "Remember," he told his teams, "we're not just fixing the immediate problems. We're building systems that can survive without us if necessary. No species should ever again be taken for granted." The work was enormous. Atmospheric processors on dozens of worlds needed complete rebuilding. Trade networks had to be redesigned from the ground up. Communication systems required integration protocols that most species had never imagined. But this time, humans weren't working alone or behind the scenes. Alien engineers worked alongside human coordinators, learning not just what to do but why it mattered. The invisible knowledge that had made human-managed systems so reliable was finally being shared openly. Ambassador In-Su oversaw the establishment of the new governmental structure. The Federation Council looked nothing like the old chambers where species had argued over territory and resources. Representatives sat in mixed groups with humans serving as mediators and translators between different ways of thinking. "The key principle," In-Su explained to the new representatives, "is that every species has something valuable to contribute. Your job is not to compete with each other, but to figure out how to combine your strengths most effectively." It was a lesson the galaxy had learned the hard way. The crystalline collective's energy manipulation abilities were incredible, but useless without Veltaran engineering to build the infrastructure. The Hive Collective's organizational skills were amazing, but meaningless without human coordination to integrate them with other species' capabilities. Counselor Tethval, representing the survivors of the old system, stood to address the new Federation Council. His species had lost their homeworld to atmospheric failure, and he had seen firsthand the cost of taking human contributions for granted. "Fellow beings," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of experience, "we are here because we failed to understand the value of cooperation. The humans tried to teach us these lessons for 150 years, but we were too proud to listen." The chamber was filled with representatives from species that had barely survived the crisis. Some had lost entire colonies. Others had seen their populations reduced by billions. All had learned that independence without interdependence was impossible. "We dissolved the old Galactic Council," Tethval continued, "and established this federation on principles of mutual respect and shared responsibility. Never again will any species be taken for granted. Never again will we assume that essential contributions are worthless because they seem simple or invisible." President Ne Young watched the ceremony from the observation deck. The galaxy was slowly rebuilding, but it would take decades to fully recover from the damage caused by 5 years of mismanagement. The new systems being installed were stronger and more resilient, but they carried the scars of hard-learned lessons. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "the education program is showing promising results. Alien engineers are beginning to understand systems integration principles. Within a generation, they should be able to maintain these systems independently. That was the goal. Not to make the galaxy permanently dependent on humans, but to teach other species the cooperation skills they needed to thrive. The crisis had proven that no species could survive alone, no matter how advanced or powerful they might be." Dr. Minjung worked in the new research facility on Haven, the planet that had nearly been abandoned due to atmospheric failure. Now it served as a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Human atmospheric engineers worked alongside crystalline, energy specialists and Veltaran construction teams to build the most advanced terraforming system ever created. "The key insight," she explained to her mixed species team, "is that complex systems require multiple types of expertise. No single species has all the answers, but together, we can solve problems that would be impossible alone." Her students included young aliens who had grown up during the crisis years. They had seen the cost of species rivalry and were eager to learn cooperation. These children would be the first generation to grow up in the new Federation, thinking of themselves as galactic citizens rather than members of competing species. The final ceremony took place on the anniversary of humanity's departure. Representative Young Ho, who had been a child during the Exodus, spoke for the new generation of humans returning to galactic civilization. 7 years ago, humanity left this galaxy in sadness, hoping you would learn to work together without us, he said. Today we return not as your saviors, but as your partners in building something better than what existed before. The new Federation faced many challenges. Some species still struggled with the transition from competition to cooperation. Kermimorsi. Allocation remained complex when different species had such different needs. Integration of technologies from 200 different civilizations was an ongoing puzzle, but the foundation was strong. Every major system now included input from multiple species, coordinated by human integration specialists. Every important decision was made by councils that understood the interdependence of galactic civilization. Every citizen learned from childhood that cooperation was not just preferable but essential for survival. President Na Young walked through the gardens of New Harmony Station, the Federation's new capital. Human children played alongside alien youngsters, all of them growing up in a galaxy that finally understood the value of working together. "Mama," her daughter asked, "why did the old galaxy not understand cooperation?" Na Young smiled and knelt down beside the child. "Sometimes people have to lose something before they understand how valuable it was. The galaxy lost humanity's help and discovered that they needed it more than they realized. But we came back," the girl observed. "Yes, we came back, and this time everyone understands that we all need each other. Above them, The stars shone on a galaxy forever changed. The council that had once watched humanity depart with indifference was gone, replaced by a federation that understood the true cost of taking any species for granted. The price of that understanding had been high, measured in lost worlds and billions of lives. But the lesson had been learned. Never again would the galaxy forget that in the vast complexity of galactic civilization, every species mattered. Every contribution had value, and cooperation was not just an ideal but a necessity for survival. The quiet exodus was over. The age of true cooperation had begun.